From Tokyo, Japan and Changsha, China, this is Down to Business English with your hosts, Skip Montreux and Dez Morgan.
Hello, Dez. How are things with you?
Good, Skip. I'm well into the semester at my university. All the exams are marked, and now we're getting ready for the summer remedial. How about yourself?
You know, I have been pretty busy over here too with several overseas prep courses. One just finished earlier this week, and another one is finishing up next week.
You're working with students who are transferring overseas?
Yes, one person is headed to the US for 3 whole years, and the other is on their way to Singapore.
And they'll be using English in the office on a daily basis?
Yes, they will. English is the language of business.
Well, that must be pretty exciting for them, I guess.
I think so, and I am sure they will do well. Anyway, what is on the agenda today? Do you have a business news topic lined up for us?
I do. There's one big economic topic at the moment that's impacting companies and businesses around the world, and that is inflation.
Of course. Even here in Japan, which experienced deflation for the longest time, inflation has been making its mark on food prices. I get a bit of sticker shock every time I go grocery shopping.
Well, we could talk all day about the impact of inflation and its causes, but I thought that today we could focus on how inflation is actually calculated.
Oh, great idea. We all know what inflation is, but I, for one, have never gotten into the nuts and bolts of how it is actually calculated.
So let's do it. Let's get D2B down to business with inflation and the different way it's calculated and tracked. Let's get things started today with 3 letters. CPI.
Oh, I know this one. CPI stands for the Consumer Price Index. It is one of the main figures used to measure inflation.
That's correct. In the UK, the Office for National Statistics, or ONS, tracks the price of a representative basket of goods and services.
Maybe explain that for our listeners. What exactly do you mean by a representative basket of goods and services?
A representative basket of goods is basically a sample shopping basket. It includes many of the things people commonly buy: groceries, clothes, transport, household items, and services.
A collection of prices consumers pay for things.
By following how the cost of that basket changes over time, the ONS can track or measure inflation and deflation.
And there are other measures as well.
There is also CPIH, which stands for Consumer Price Index, including owner-occupiers' housing costs.
Doesn't the CPI include housing?
The CPI includes rent, but not mortgage interest costs. The CPIH, on the other hand, tracks a variety of costs associated with owning, maintaining, and even living in your own home, including council tax.
It sounds very detailed and comprehensive.
It is. But long story short, CPI is still the best known and most internationally recognized figure.
I know that Statistics Canada is the body that calculates CPI in Canada. And in the US, I believe it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
That's right. Now, getting back to the basket of goods and services, this basket is updated every year, and it's quite interesting because it illustrates changes in consumer habits and lifestyles over time.
So you can actually see changes in buying trends.
Precisely. The ONS tracks prices for around 760 goods and services. This year, hummus and alcohol-free beer were added into the basket, while premium lager bought in a pub was removed.
So that suggests a shift towards healthier eating and drinking habits, or at least changing habits around alcohol and social drinking.
Correct. There were also some interesting additions in the services and lifestyle categories, including pet grooming services
Hmm.
and motorhomes.
Well, those all sound a bit random, but I guess they infer people are spending more money on their pets and alternative holiday choices.
I think these two items suggest a few things. People are spending more on pets, and some households may have more disposable income for leisure travel. Plus, there was a big boom in motorhome purchases during the pandemic, and some of that interest has continued.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
There were some other changes, but those two areas were the ones that caught my eye. There was also another huge change in how data was collected.
Well, I would guess that data is collected from multiple supermarkets and other retailers.
It is. But now, with more people scanning items at large retailers, the ONS is starting to tap directly into that data. That should give them a more immediate picture of how much of each basket item is being purchased and what price people are actually paying for them.
With discounts and special offers being so common, that kind of real time data could give the ONS a much clearer picture. But, Des, why is an accurate CPI number so important?
It is vital that the CPI number is accurate. Pension increases are often linked to the CPI. Wage negotiations between workers and employers can be influenced by the CPI. And this is the big one. Central bank policy is heavily influenced by inflation figures.
Are they? In what way?
Look at this example. The Bank of England sets a target inflation rate of 2%. If inflation is above that figure, then it may choose to raise interest rates to try and bring the rate down below the inflation rate.
Right. And interest rates have a direct effect on mortgage rates, credit card rates, and economic growth in general.
Exactly. However, some critics suspect that although central banks want the CPI to be accurate, they generally prefer a lower figure over a higher one.
Do you think that really is the case?
It's a complicated question. I wouldn't say central banks change the number directly. The CPI figures are calculated by statistical agencies. But there are certain methods used in CPI calculations that critics often focus on.
And they are?
One method is called substitution. When something becomes more expensive, people often substitute or switch to a cheaper alternative, or at least buy the cheaper item more often.
So if an item like beef, for example, increased in price, consumers might buy chicken instead.
That is indeed the basic idea. In many CPI calculations, this kind of consumer behavior is partly reflected through a method called geometric weighting.
Geometric weighting. Okay, got it.
Now, the example you gave, substituting chicken for beef, is called within category substitution, and it's used in many countries when calculating the CPI. But what about this? What if meat becomes so expensive that you give it up completely and become a vegetarian?
I can confidently say that would never happen, Des. I could never be a vegetarian.
Well, not you specifically. What if a lot of people in general stopped buying meat?
Are you implying that governments include that kind of shift across product categories in the CPI calculation?
It's actually called substitution across categories. It's not usually used to calculate the CPI, but in the US, there is another index called the chained CPI, or CPI-U, And that index does include substitution across categories.
What does the U stand for?
Urban consumer.
Okay. So, is chain CPI also used to calculate pensions or social security payments?
It has been proposed several times, but it is controversial.
Why is that?
Critics argue that it assumes people can keep substituting cheaper alternatives without any serious effect on their standard of living.
A valid criticism. You mentioned that there were several mechanisms.
I did. Owner's equivalent rent, or OER, is another one. Basically, it estimates how much a homeowner would have to pay to rent the home they currently live in. So it's not directly affected by mortgage rates or house prices.
So again, it's likely to be a lower figure.
That's right.
Well, I am pretty sure that in Canada, CPI is calculated with the mortgage interest, maintenance, property insurance, and all the property taxes are included.
You're right. OER is used in the US CPI calculation, but Canada and the UK use different approaches to measuring housing costs.
It seems a bit unfair to be calculating what you would be spending when the figure should really reflect what you are actually spending.
If you're skeptical of the CPI calculation, I have one more mechanism that you're sure to disagree with.
And what would that be?
A hedonic adjustment.
A hedonic adjustment. Well, that's a new term for me.
Let me illustrate how this works. Let's say you bought a laptop 2 years ago for, say, $1,000. And then today, you bought the most recent model of that same laptop for the same price.
So, no price increase.
No price increase. But this is the most recent model, and it has more memory and a faster CPU. So you actually got more for the same price. By applying a hedonic adjustment, we can say that you actually paid less than you did 2 years ago because the specifications of the product have improved.
Yeah, but I'm still $1,000 out of pocket.
Yes, but you got more value. Say you got $1,300 of value. In fact, if you bought the original one today, it would only cost you $700.
Yeah, tell that to my bank account, which is $1,000 lighter.
It all depends on how you look at it.
So tell me, does every government apply this hedonic adjustment?
It's common for electronic items in many countries. And in the US, it's also used for vehicles, household appliances, and even some types of software.
Well, I could see some logic to this hedonic adjustment. But a mid-range laptop is still a mid-range laptop, if you see what I mean.
I do.
It may be faster and have more memory than an older computer, but users often need those upgrades just to keep up with the newer software.
That is my opinion too. In the example I gave, you still spent $1,000 regardless of the specifications of the machine you bought. Sure, it's a better computer, but in many cases, you're only keeping pace with the upgrades in the software you use.
So, if we step back from all of this, inflation is not just one simple number, is it?
No, it isn't. The basic idea is simple. Prices go up or prices go down. But calculating that change is much more complicated.
And CPI is just not an economic statistic. It can affect pensions, wages, interest rates, mortgage payments, and central bank policy.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to get D2V down to vocabulary.
The first item on our D2D list today is the noun phrase sticker shock. Sticker shock is the surprise or shock you feel when you see that something is much more expensive than you expected.
The word sticker refers to a price sticker or price tag. So if you look at the price of something and think, wow, that is expensive, you're experiencing sticker shock.
You can use this phrase when prices have gone up really quickly, or when the final cost of something is much, much higher than you expected. You can get sticker shock at a supermarket, when you're buying a car, booking a hotel, or even looking at a business invoice from one of your company's vendors.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of people around the world have experienced sticker shock recently.
I know I have. In the introduction of today's episode, I used this expression when we were talking about inflation in Japan. I said that here in Japan, inflation has been impacting food prices. I made the comment that I get a bit of a sticker shock every time I go grocery shopping.
In other words, when Skip goes shopping, he's surprised by how expensive some food items have become. He expects one price, but the actual price he sees is higher.
In a business context, you might hear your boss or coworker say, "It was a real sticker shock when we got the new quote from our supplier. The price was almost 25% higher than last year."
A very realistic example. A lot of companies are dealing with exactly that kind of cost increase. Moving on, the next word on our D2V list is the verb to measure. To measure something means to find out the size, amount, level, or degree of something.
You use measure when you are talking about physical things. For example, we can measure distance, weight, temperature, or the size of a room.
That's right, but in business and economics, we also measure things that are less physical, like performance, productivity, customer satisfaction,
And, of course, inflation.
In today's episode, we used it several times. For example, Skip said that the Consumer Price Index was one of the main ways used to measure inflation.
In other words, CPI is one of the tools economists and governments use to understand how much prices are rising or falling.
Another example would be how businesses will often ask their customers to fill out a survey after they use their service or product. The information they get measures customer satisfaction.
Good example. I am always filling out customer satisfaction surveys.
You are? I'll only fill one out if I'm really dissatisfied or really satisfied with a product.
You are a one extreme or the other kind of consumer, aren't you, Des?
I suppose I am.
The next word we want to look at today is another verb, to track. To track something means to follow or monitor it over time.
Over time is the key idea.
That's right. You are not just checking something once. You are checking it regularly so you can see changes, patterns, or progress.
In business, companies track all kinds of things. They track sales, track costs, track delivery times, website traffic, and even employee performance.
In today's report, Des said that in the UK, the Office for National Statistics tracks the price of a representative basket of goods and services. He said that by following how the cost of that basket changes over time, the ONS can track inflation and deflation.
So, in simpler terms, the ONS regularly checks the prices of many common goods and services. Then, it compares those prices over time to see whether prices are generally going up or down. Can you give us an example, Skip?
Sure. A manufacturer might track their customer complaints by product category so they can clearly understand which issues are coming up most often for each type of product.
Yeah, nice example. The company is not just reacting to one complaint, it's collecting information over time so it can see patterns and then make better decisions.
What's next on the list?
The final item on our D2V list today is the phrase to be out of pocket. When you're out of pocket, you have spent your own money or you have paid money that you may not get back right away. The money is out of your pocket.
Right. This phrase focuses on the actual money that leaves your wallet or bank account.
You will often hear this phrase when people are talking about their expenses, especially when they have to pay a large amount of money up front. In today's episode, we used this phrase when we were talking about hedonic adjustments. I gave the example of buying a laptop 2 years ago for $1,000 and then buying a newer, better model today for the same price.
Dez explained that because the newer laptop had more memory and a faster CPU, the inflation calculation might treat it as if the buyer got more value for the same price.
And then Skip pushed back on that idea by saying he would still be $1,000 out of pocket. In other words, even if the new laptop is technically better, Skip still paid $1,000. That money had left his bank account.
I know it is just an example, but saying I'm out of pocket $1,000 is so painful.
Well, here's a real-world example from my life that might make you feel better. I recently went on a trip to Guangzhou to promote the university I work for. It went really well, and the best part was the university paid up front for everything, so I was never out of pocket.
Would you like to help Down to Business English reach more people wanting to improve their business English skills? Follow Down to Business English on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any place podcasts are found. Leave a rating and a review and tell everyone how much you enjoy the show.
Thanks for all that information on inflation and the Consumer Price Index, Dez. I knew the CPI was important, but I wasn't aware of how complicated it is to calculate.
Yes, well, it's more complicated than most people realize. The basic idea is simple, but measuring and tracking those changes fairly and accurately is not easy.
No, it isn't. D2B members and Apple Podcast subscribers, the bonus Down to Vocabulary for today's episode will be out within the next few days. In that bonus episode, we will look at 6 more useful words and phrases from today's report. To be lined up, the nuts and bolts of something, a long story short, an immediate picture, and a valid criticism.
A very useful set of phrases for talking about inflation, prices, and consumer behavior.
If you are a D2B member, make sure you have copied your members-only podcast feed URL from your account page on the D2B website and pasted it into the podcast app of your choice. That way, you will not miss out on the bonus D2B episode when it is released.
And Apple Podcast subscribers, you do not need to do anything. The bonus D2V episode will appear automatically in your feed as soon as it goes live.
And if you are not yet a D2B member or Apple Podcast subscriber, but you get value from what we are doing here on Down to Business English, do consider supporting us by becoming a D2B member or Apple Podcast subscriber.
To become a D2B member, just visit benglish.com/membership and sign up today.
That's d2benglish.com/membership. And to become an Apple Podcast subscriber, just visit the Down to Business English show page in Apple Podcasts and click the subscribe button. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Down to Business English. Business news to improve your business English.